We could do anything. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?
Welcome to Data-Driven Sports Betting. I'm Adrian Betts, and I use my brain to make bets. In this video, I thought we would just check out a couple of the available plays for the upcoming big game, the NFL game that's happening very soon. We're not allowed to say it, I don't think. I just try not to get sued. So we're going to talk about that game, you know, that the big one, the one that's coming up. So we're going to do that, and we're going to see what we can find on that game and just kind of look at what is our data telling us and how might we use A-Train Station to find a few plays. So let's do it, shall we? Yes, we shall. Let's go into the analyze page. And first things first, I want to show you what the weightings that I'm using. So this is my sharp book centric weightings. And this is where I like to start a lot of the time. I kind of go back and forth between looking at a broad-based market view and the sharp view. So the sharp view is where I have BetOnline 1, Caesars 1, Pinnacle 1, everybody else is at a 0. So I'm basically saying these are the 3 sharpest books on our list as far as I'm concerned. I'm going to look for plays that way. Right? So I've gone in and I've looked at the search. I do my height already bet. I have already bet a few of them. We've got minimum EV percentage 1.5%, which is usually a good rule of thumb. Max odds 250. That's kind of my standard next 7 days. And for this, we've gone in and I've got these 3 plays up and I've already brought those up. So let's look at this one. We've got San Francisco 49ers, Kansas City Chiefs. In this case, what we see is we have our 3 sharp books. We got Pinnacle, BetOnline, Caesars. Now, Pinnacle and BetOnline have both moved substantially to the left. Caesars has gone the other way. They've gone a little bit further to the right. What we do see, though, is FanDuel at minus 108 has a pretty substantial difference of opinion to the market compared to everybody else. So much so that we even have an arbitrage opportunity with BetOnline. Just 2 points, but that gives us a big sign that, hey, there is some difference of opinion in this market. So in this case, what I'm seeing is like, based on this market where you see market consolidation, you can see our average range. So for our sharp books, here's that range. FanDuel, not outside of that range, but still pretty far off from our Novig line at minus 108 versus 113.9. So we have several points of value there. And so I think in this case, yeah, I like it. I'm going to make this play because we see enough consistency across 3 sharp books, and we're still getting 2.5% on our positive EV calculation to go make this play over at FanDuel. So that's in fact actually what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go over to FanDuel, rushing yards, Brock Purdy, the over 12.5 is at minus 108. That's the number we want down here, you see? And then we just go make that play, right? So then you just go make that play at FanDuel for $90 and or whatever your bet settings tell you, and you can move on from there. So in this case, that is the kind of thing that you would do to make that play for Brock Purdy. So clear example, nice outlier line, easy play. Next up, we have Christian McCaffrey receiving yards. In this case, we see Pinnacle has some pretty heavy line movement, more than anybody else in the market. BetOnline's line isn't even offered here anymore, so they're irrelevant to this calculation. Caesars has been holding firm at minus 120 and minus 110. But you see, with Pinnacle's line movement so far to the left, you have to ask yourself, well, Caesars and FanDuel are exactly the same, except FanDuel has 10 points less of width on just one side, and so they're lined up on one side. On the other side, FanDuel's offering a better price. But Pinnacle has a wildly different opinion on where this should be. So, given the nature of the big game, we know Pinnacle, I mean, this is going to be the most bet sporting event globally, at least this weekend. So, do we think Pinnacle has at least as good a read as Caesars on this? Probably. Do I think it's probably a good play at FanDuel at that minus 110 on the over 33 and a hook? Possibly. But Pinnacle has such a difference of opinion. Do we think that that is going to be unique to them, or is a lot of these books taking a lot of these things? I mean, this is Christian McCaffrey receiving yards. This is a pretty heavily bet play. So I just can't tell at this point whether or not Pinnacle's the off line or if they're onto something that nobody else has. With the amount of movement, it could be them just trying to balance their books as a result of a bunch of sharp action. In this case, I want to play it at FanDuel. There's a lot of reasons with the arbitrage that I want to play it, especially with that plus 119 at Pinnacle. Pinnacle isn't going to go in and give you 9 points on an arbitrage willy-nilly, right? So this is another one where I would probably say, you know, I believe in Pinnacle enough to want to make this play, but I'm probably not going to play it for the full amount. I'm probably going to discount that to my recommended wager here is $85. I might do it for $50. I think 50 is a reasonable amount that I would do. I would reduce it a little bit just because I see enough in this market that gives me concern that I would say, okay, I'm going to do it for 50 at FanDuel instead. So that's what I'll do there. And that's exactly the way I would analyze that. I don't love this play because I see some a little bit of inconsistency in the data. So we did the first 2 plays, and then this Brandon Ayuk anytime touchdown score really wasn't that interesting. For a player prop, I'm usually looking at least 2%. I didn't see a lot there worth talking about, so we skipped that one. But you're like, okay, well, we're done now, right? Well, not exactly. So if you go in, there's a couple different things you could also do. So the first thing we could do is change our weightings. So we could go and do our weightings, and we could check, let's just reset to our defaults. Let's save our weightings there. And now we can come back and we see, okay, there's a whole bunch of things in other games, but let's look here. We can do 1.5%. We'll hide our Eddie bet, and we'll see if we can find any other plays that are worth looking at. So let's just search for NFL, and all of a sudden we see a few more things. So what we can see here is we have a couple that we've made other plays on, but it's not necessarily plays on this particular market. And so in this case, what we have here, we can see down here, Brock Purdy passing interceptions. Well, this is Brock Purdy rushing yards, so we're still interested in this. What do we see? All of a sudden, because we're using different weightings, we have a different market to look at that has interest. And that's really what the weightings are about. Can you find plays that are interesting? And that's what we did. We just say, okay, let's look at some different weightings just to pick out what might be interesting. Well, in this case, I mean, we have Pinnacle as a 10 weighting here, so that's still pretty powerful. If we go to Pinnacle only, you're still going to see 2.95%. So 2.48% was when we have a bunch of different books. And so that gives us a nice broad coverage. We're still overweighting Pinnacle and BetOnline pretty substantially here. And so we have Brock Purdy rushing yards over 12.5, minus 108. That looks pretty good, especially when I'm seeing with BetOnline, they have an arbitrage opportunity here. A lot of line movement has gone to the left for a lot of these books, but FanDuel hasn't seemed to reacted to that same level of news yet. So in this case, I'm all for it. Let's go. Brock Purdy rushing yards, 12.5 to the over. Let's go over to FanDuel. We found the over 12.5, minus 108, and over 12.5 rushing yards. And this one, I will go full beans on my recommended wager here for $90. So that one is in on that. So now we'll go to FanDuel and we'll just log the minus 108, $90, hit save, and then we'll be able to see it in this list when we refresh. So you see the refreshed page. Now you can see that Brock Purdy rushing yards over 12.5. And we track the closing line value alongside with this. So you can see what was the EV when you wanted to make that play, and then how is your closing line value tracking. Now in this case, we're using the default weighting, so it's going to be exactly the same. You can see how it's changing over time. We just placed it, so obviously it hasn't yet changed. So that's how we would do that. We already have one play on this. We have San Francisco 49ers minus 7. This could be the opposite side. You got Chiefs minus 6, so another kind of underdog play. We're not going to make this play because we already have something that kind of competes with that in our list. But it's still, if I look at this play and say Chiefs minus 6, well, nice outlier here at DraftKings. If you like the Chiefs in this game, this might be a good play for you. Right? And so this is where, too, I played the San Francisco 49ers play a little bit earlier today during the live stream, and it was pure math. I don't really have an opinion on which team I think is better, but when I look at the math, I could say I could very well play this Kansas City Chiefs minus 6 as well. Just saying, well, if either team can win by a touchdown or more than a touchdown, then we'll be okay. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I could definitely see how either one could happen, and I'd be having plus money on both sides. So you can definitely do that. So in this case, I am not going to make the play, but I really like this play at plus 250 over DraftKings. Seems like something that you may very much want to consider. Finally, on this play, you have Caesars, which is our most heavily rated book in terms of weighting. They're the outlier here. I ain't touching this. That's all I need to do. I look at this for 1 second. I'm like, no way. It's not even a 2% play. No way. Not touching it. So then you're like, okay, well, we've done another pass on this to see different plays. Great. We're done now, right? Well, not necessarily. Hey, you could go back and start monkeying with your weighting some more. Highly recommend doing that for sure. The other thing you do, you click on this team name. And this is going to bring us to what we call the market browser. So now we can look at it and say, okay, well, is there anything else interesting here? So this is an entirely different way to slice through it. And this is going to be an area that we're going to continue to invest in the design and all that, but it's still useful today. So if we come into this game, you can see there's a bunch of different money line, spread, totals, and they're going to be first quarter, first half, etc. But you can get all these different spreads, and you can see this whole ladder. And what you can do is you can kind of look and say, oh, well, if I were willing to play, minus 14. So we talked about some of the touchdown, 7-point spreads. Well, what if you did 14? What would that look like? You just click at it. You click at it and say, well, not a lot to work with here, but if you were going to make a play because you think San Francisco 49ers could win by 2 touchdowns, this might be something you're interested in. If you're going to do it, definitely go do it at DraftKings. You're going to get an extra 131 points of value by doing it. So that allows you, in our TradeStation software, you can find a play that you might not find any other way. And there might be a bunch of reasons why we wouldn't find that through our normal positive EV searching. But in this case, you can go and look and you can see right on the page, based on your current weightings, what is the EV profile at these particular plays. And so that's a very powerful tool because we're running tons of stuff in the background. You can find some interesting things. So if you say, okay, let's look at some totals. What total has the best EV as far as I can see? It's over under 30 and a hook. It's kind of wild because it's plus 830, under 30 and a half. Could it happen? Sure. Am I going to play it? Probably not. Probably not. Not when it's just FanDuel and PointsBet. But these are the kinds of things that you can look at and say, all right, there's some really interesting things here. You can pick team totals, anything that we have markets for that have multiple books that we can match up. This is where we can create EV calculations. And most plays don't have any EV, but some plays do. Some plays at least have an opportunity to get some EV, so you can home in on that and say, well, is there anything worth playing? Like here, you're still 75 points away from being able to do it as an arbitrage. But if you like the 49ers to go hog wild, you know where you can play that. You play it at DraftKings. So this is a very easy way to find interesting things. And so I wanted to at least bring it up. It's not much to look at today. We're going to have better, more powerful tools to get at some of these things. But even now, if you're looking for plays on that big football game, there are a lot of ways you can go and do that. And so that's where I think that you want to have a tool, whether it's TradeStation or whether it's something else. You want to have a tool that gives you a lot of options to find plays, that allows you to explore how you want to explore, because then it becomes a function not of your data processing or your software interface, but it becomes a function of the quality of your strategy. And that's the thing, is that strategy is what matters here. Placing bets is easy. Finding bets, pretty easy if you have the right tools. But that marriage between your strategy at a high level, that thing that hey, if I could do this, it would be profitable, or you think that it would be profitable, and then the ability to operationalize that strategy, how you want to operationalize it. That's what drives how we build TradeStation. We want to be able to let you create all the customizations you need for your strategy so that you can execute that strategy, operationalize that strategy, and make the plays. Find the plays, make the plays. And that is what we think we do uniquely well here. So it seems very complicated on the surface, but we've tried to break it down in such a way that you can start very simply, take the default book weightings, take the default filter and sort settings. You're not going to get into too much trouble, but as you want to explore, we give you a lot of different ways to be able to do that kind of exploration. And when I look at some of these, my goodness, these are so exciting to see so many different kinds of plays. I mean, you see a college basketball play, look at all these positive EV opportunities. You see 11 points of value. You got DraftKings, Pinnacle, and Bovada here. Bovada's gone off, but it's just a DraftKings v Pinnacle. You're sitting here with a plus 145 at DraftKings. That's pretty interesting. Right? That is a pretty interesting play that you may not find easily using other tools because they don't have that kind of customizability on the weighting side. And that's something that we think is really powerful and essential, because how can you become a better sports bettor if you don't understand how you're getting to those bets? You need to be able to see that transparently underneath. So that's why we do that. That's why I thought today would be a good example of how can we go in and find, some NFL plays. So by using TradeStation, you see these plays and you realize, like, by changing the weightings and again, looking at different books. I mean, these are just the books that I have. If I wanted to go and look at all the books, I can select that. And all of a sudden we go to NFL. Watch what happens now. Look at this. There's tons of plays across the entire landscape of books. I don't play at all of them, so I can't. But maybe you have ESPN Bet. You can go in and say, oh, I like ESPN Bet versus Bet Online here. Offset bet, who are you betting on? This is a no vig total market here because you got plus 120, minus 120. Who do you think is sharper, ESPN Bet or Bet Online? I personally think Bet Online is sharper, so I'm making this play at ESPN Bet if I'm betting at ESPN Bet, right? So that's where I think you can really find lots of different opportunities based on where you can play using the right tools. So hopefully this at least help you understand where the data-driven side of sports betting really comes from. There's a lot to learn with the software, just like anything. You start playing the piano with some Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but before you know it, you're playing crazy symphonies and other such things that I would never be able to play myself. But with practice and time and thought, you can get there. A-Train Station's the kind of instrument for sports betting that will let you get to that level. Many other sports betting tools out there would never let you do that. They want you playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, or then they might switch you to Jingle Bells, or they might switch you to something else. And here at A-Train Station, our opinion is that you should decide what you're playing. We give you the instrument to play whatever you want. So with that, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully this video was a little bit informative and gives you at least a couple plays for this weekend. With that, everybody, thank you so much. And for now, this train is leaving the station. Until next time, save those units for the pros. And do your betting like the pros.